The Infographic Show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel again. I'm trying to remember the video that I reacted to from them a while back. But this video here, the title says, Real Reason the Epstein List Will Never Be Released. They always do a good breakdown, highlighting all the information. Very, very detailed video. So I'm excited to check this out because I just want to know what they're thinking, what's in their mind. Because I feel like they may be onto something. And I said at this point now, I just don't know if the information we're going to get is going to be what we have been looking for. So let's see what they got to say. We ain't gonna waste no more time. I'll leave the original video in the description just in case I have to trim something out. Let's jump right into it.
It is the hottest reading document in the world, but no one's able to read it. The infamous Epstein list is rumored to have it all: crimes, blackmail, and some famous faces. Politicians, billionaires, celebrities, all allegedly connected. But despite the public's demand for answers, this list remains locked away, possibly forever. So what is really keeping it buried? Find out on this episode of The Infographic Show, Real Reason the Epstein List Will Never Be Released. In the world of big business and politics, a certain level of crime is almost expected. It's not like you can open a newspaper without finding out about some bigwig getting themselves into trouble.
Facts.
So it takes a lot to really shock the world. But the case of Jeffrey Epstein did it. The powerful financier had a rags-to-riches story, becoming a power broker in the finance world despite not having a college degree. After leaving a teaching career in 1976, he worked on Wall Street and eventually started his own firm, and it was there that he collected a lot of powerful friends. But unfortunately, he used them for evil. Jeffrey Epstein's name might not have been known by most people if it wasn't for his criminal activities. He was rich enough to own his own private island, Little St. James, and he turned it into a social club for the rich and powerful, one that was known as much for its depravity as for its beauty. For the select friends of Epstein's who visited him here, any pleasure was theirs to be had. But as time went on, it became clear this wasn't just a house of pleasure, it was a...
Now again, grown folks doing grown things, ain't nothing wrong with that as long as it's legal. Just wanna say that, But we all already know what he was convicted of.
House of Eve here, with Epstein essentially running the island as the world's most fashionable brothel. And eventually it all caught up to him. Jeffrey Epstein faced a host of criminal charges over several decades and was sentenced to 18 months, but that didn't hurt his social connections and he quickly rebuilt his Rolodex. It all seemed to be going swimmingly, until 2019. He was hit with a raft of charges that would see him sent to prison for life if put on trial. Around the world, everyone who had paid a visit to the infamous Money Man was no doubt quaking in their boots. But he would never make it to trial. Only a month after he was arrested under mysterious circumstances. How did he die when he was alone in his cell, under high security? Why was no one watching? His socialite partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, was convicted of many of the same charges and given a 20-year sentence. But she was the only one convicted in the case with Epstein dead. And that led to many people asking a key question. The sellers were convicted, but what about the buyers? Like any good criminal mastermind, Jeffrey Epstein knew he needed leverage. It's believed that he kept a record of the dealings that he had with people, and those records were likely key to the government charging him with the crimes that led to his final arrest. But 6 years after those charges were filed, those logs are still locked away. The media has kept up the pressure to release them, as have activists on both the left and right, but the government has been slow to release even the smallest details, and the files might stay locked up for good. It was a key campaign promise of Donald Trump's to release the Epstein files, something that his base approved of. After all, there were countless conspiracy theories about who was on the list, but as his second term began, Republicans waited with bated breath for more information, and they kept on waiting. And then in July 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that they wouldn't be releasing any further information on the files. And there have been no further cases filed against any co-conspirators since Maxwell's conviction. And the case is getting colder and colder. If the Epstein list is as dire as the conspirators want people to believe, then this means that the hundreds of cases have just been thrown out of the window. The people have just been let off scot-free. Even many of Trump's loyal supporters on his private social media platform Truth Social were outraged, meaning that he's faced the most pushback from his own side that he's seen since his re-election. But at the same time, others said the picture might be more complicated, and the whole thing might be out of his hands. Despite what various sketchy leaks on websites with a ton of ads and spyware might claim, there is no exhaustive Epstein list that the government is keeping in a box somewhere. The list is actually a massive collection of documents, flight logs, court filings, and legal documents collected not over just years but over decades. The list people are looking for would be pieced together from bits and pieces of all these documents, all seized as part of a massive investigation into the Epstein criminal conspiracy, which means that this might be a little like looking for a needle in a haystack. The most interesting thing people are looking for is the flight logs, which cover the most elaborate part of the conspiracy, the private island. This island is located in the Caribbean with only one way to get there, by air, usually on...
And again, you got to remember, I feel like people know what was going on and people still went to this island. You know what I mean? I ain't saying everybody participated. I talked about that before, but there was no way that people didn't know. So those flight logs are very, very important. But again, just don't know if we're going to get what we're asking for.
Private plane chartered by Epstein. It's believed that VIPs traveled this way, which means this is where you'll find the evidence of the bold-faced names that visited the island. Could this be the key to the biggest celebrity conspiracy in American history? A lot of people want to find out. Over the years, the media has done exhaustive investigations and exposés into the Epstein conspiracy, interviewing victims and naming names. This has included some powerful figures in the legal, political, and financial sector, some of which have fought back hard, filing defamation lawsuits. That makes the case especially fraught, as even the slightest whiff of being associated with crimes this disgusting can be a career ruiner. Newspapers are naturally hesitant to publish something they can't back up, but online pundits are less so. And many of these freelance journalists have taken it upon themselves to file Freedom of Information requests with the government to unseal their documents. But so far, they are staying locked up tight. They say no publicity is bad publicity in most cases, but that is definitely not the case here. The files, whatever form they might take, have taken on a massive conspiracy far larger than themselves. Most people who claim to have seen the Epstein files have actually seen a complete forgery, usually a list of celebrities that the person who wrote doesn't like. This fervor reached its peak in 2020 when a conspiracy theory started spreading that celebrities like Tom Hanks, who had never been associated with Epstein in any way, had been arrested and executed for their role in the crimes, and then replaced with a body double. We'll just chalk that one up to people going a little stir-crazy back then. But that doesn't mean that a lot of real people shouldn't be worried. The problem with sorting out the list is that Epstein cultivated a large friend group deliberately. The man was an infamous glad-hander who worked his way into every powerful social circle that he could. When billionaire ex-mayor Michael Bloomberg was running for president in 2020, a photo of him with Epstein at a New York party started making the rounds, leading many people to speculate that he might have been involved. But no ties to the infamous criminal were ever found beyond them exchanging a few words at a large social event. Not that it helped Bloomberg's presidential ambitions. And many other people made the mistake of getting just a little too close. Little St. James was a tropical paradise located in the U.S. Virgin Islands and home to some beautiful views. It made an amazing vacation spot and an amazing spot to talk business. It's believed that Epstein invited countless business associates over there over the years, including some of the most famous names in finance and tech. But there is very little in the way of information about what they did there. So it's likely that at least some of them just sipped margaritas, either not knowing what was going on or choosing not to look too closely. And that lack of information is what is driving people crazy. Right now, the Epstein files have taken on an almost mythical quality in people's minds. No one knows what form they take, and no one knows what names are inside. And that means everyone's just making up their own version in their head. And that makes it all seem the more urgent that they be released. Most people no doubt believe that their most hated politician is on that list. In fact, if the evidence isn't there, some conspiracy theorists will just make it up for themselves. When Adam Schiff, an enemy of the current administration, was running for Senate in 2024, his social media posts were frequently spammed with an image of him meeting with Epstein. There was just one problem: that meeting never happened. It was a Photoshop, and not a very good one either. But it still didn't stop people from circulating it ad nauseum, which leads me...
Yeah, and you got to be very, very careful with a lot of AI that's going on because you don't know what's real, what's fake. I always try to like pull up an article or watch some news station that is showing an interview with someone talking. I mean, an interview is an interview, an article is an article. But my whole thing is like, we're living in some really spooky times with AI. So that's why I make sure I'm using words like allegedly. Uh, but I still feel we're gonna wake up one day and it's gonna get hit with one of the biggest breaking news that we've seen in a while. I feel that's coming.
Need to ask, shouldn't the government just clear this up already? No doubt, many people were hoping the story of the list would just go away. Not just the people who are potentially on it, but the people involved with prosecuting the case. The Epstein case took years to build, so long in fact that many believed he would never face justice. But if the infamous list is ever released, the focus won't just be on the names of the powerful and the guilty. People will be looking at everything, including what authorities might have missed, which means that the prosecutors themselves could land in the hot seat. In many ways, it won't just expose the accused, it could put the entire justice system on trial, which means a lot of people might have a reason to want it hushed up. Now, if you ask the conspiracy theorists why the list hasn't been released yet, you're likely to be hit with a torrent of wild theories about everyone being on it. But in reality, many of the legal experts who have looked into the case believe that the full files are unlikely to ever be made public. And there are a lot of reasons for that. For one thing, the case isn't over until it says it's over. And there are no doubt plenty of prosecutors and judges still looking over the files, checking and double-checking to see if there's grounds for criminal charges. And if there is, they don't want to announce that in advance. One fear of the government, no doubt, is that if they're planning to drop criminal charges on any other conspirators in the Epstein affair, they don't want them tipped off. Most of the people who were prominent enough to know Epstein are likely very wealthy. If they were alerted to the fact that they're named in the files, they could easily jump on a private plane and fly to a country with no extradition treaty. These files are still with the people who could make criminal charges happen, and they don't want their work to be interrupted. But some people believe that justice may already be out of reach. The statute of limitations for most of the crimes is just 5 years, though that can vary based on the offense. In 2006, Congress removed that limit, a critical step forward. Some states like New York have also extended the statute of limitations for civil lawsuits related to abuse, giving survivors a longer window to come forward. But it may not just be the victims who are ready to sue. While plenty of rumors circulated about bold-faced names on the list, two have been among the most persistent rumors: former Democratic President Bill Clinton and President Trump himself. Now, this could just be people playing the odds. The two are amongst the most notorious American politicians and known for their scandals, but it's no doubt gotten under their skin. And now the first real piece of evidence has dropped, and it's kicked off a firestorm. The Wall Street Journal, a fiscally conservative newspaper owned by Fox News magnate Rupert Murdoch, isn't the paper you would associate with the idea of an expose on Trump. But these are strange times. They released an article detailing supposed ties between Trump and Epstein way back in 2003, including a collection of handwritten birthday letters that Trump supposedly sent to the corrupt financier. These included a sketch of a nude female silhouette, the signature Donald, and the line, "May every day be another wonderful secret." As soon as the story dropped, the president reacted. He strongly denied ever writing the letters, directed his attorney general to investigate, and filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against his former allies at the paper. It was a stunning fallout between the two parties, but also thoroughly predictable. Given the crimes Epstein was associated with, to be named as an associate could have a devastating impact on one's personal and professional life, whether it was proven or not. And that means that any news drop could ruin lives, and not just the people named. If the files were dropped casually, there would be countless people named in them, but not everyone would be one of Epstein's client business. The man was seen as an investment wizard, and he had deep links to the financial sector. It's believed that his list has an extensive number of people that he made contact with, but it's not clear if the list is detailed enough to clarify what everyone engaged in.
You see, I get what he's saying about that, because even I keep saying I don't know if everybody participated in things. Um, you know, all I'm saying is this. Let's just say you're coming to that island for the first time and you don't even know nothing about Epstein. Let's say you got invited by one of your business partners who said, "Oh, it's this rich guy who has this island We're going to go there, discuss business, have a good time, whatever. You get there and you start to see, um, I'm trying to say this in a way for YouTube because you got to be careful when you say certain words. Just when you say, so I'm going to just say when you see young girls there. And when I say young, I mean extremely. We already know what I'm trying to say. But when you see that and you go, first thing is it should be some type of head tilt, what the hell, what's going on here? You know what I mean? So if you, to me, if you didn't bust a U-turn and try to get the hell up out of there, you part of the problem. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of these people know what went down, know what they seen, know who participated in things, and they're part of the problem. You know, he's saying like a lot of these people may have went there for business, for other things. Look, man, private island, all right? And like I said, do believe that it's both sides that could be affected by this. And I'm like, who gives a damn? They should be.
If the government was to drop the files, thousands of people might be judged guilty until proven innocent. And it's not just the public shaming that they'd have to worry about. Conspiracy theories have a long history of escalating into violence. The bizarre Pizzagate conspiracy, which supposedly exposing being run through a Washington, D.C. pizza restaurant, led to the restaurant being firebombed. There are many internet tough guys who like to fancy themselves vigilantes, who see themselves as heroes taking down hackers. If names are released without context, even someone who gave Epstein investment advice in 2005 could become a target, and many people won't be willing to wait for trouble to find them. The demand by many people seems to be just release the Epstein files and let everyone sort through them. Well, if that happened, it would likely be the largest lawsuit launching pad in American history. President Trump is not the only prominent figure to get litigious when people accuse him of being involved with Epstein. The odds are the majority of Epstein associates of any form will have deep pockets. The lawsuits will likely argue that simply releasing the files without any context is by definition defamatory. Whether that argument works or not, this would be a massive burden on the legal system, one that ironically would make it harder for the federal government to keep an eye on the ball and prosecute other crimes. And there is a reason that files like this aren't just dropped in public. It's easy to assume the Epstein files are just one big document that can be uploaded on the internet, but they're not. While there might be a client log of some kind, it's never been made clear what form it takes. Epstein was highly secretive, and he might have made it in such a way that he could clearly understand it, but no one else could. The actual files that could be released are a massive collection of documents procured from Epstein and written about him by government officials and federal investigators. And the government isn't done with them just yet. The idea that there is one Epstein case isn't true either. Multiple cases have been formed out of this scandal, including the original 2006 case that sent Epstein to prison for a year, the 2019 case that led to his death, the Maxwell case, and while many people question why no clients have been charged, those are all separate investigations, potentially dozens of them, and for those more serious cases, they might still be weaving their way towards justice. While some of these cases might be past the statute of limitations, there is a little trick that prosecutors have, the charge of conspiracy. And that means the statute of limitations hits 5 years after the last act related to the offense. So if they can prove a client paid a bribe or concealed evidence related to their visits to Epstein Island, they still might be able to nail them. And that means a lot of evidence might be with judges or grand juries, and those documents are sealed. So the government might not be able to release it all legally at this point. And it's not just the clients who will be exposed. Many of the victims of Epstein Island, and few have spoken out about it. One of the most famous victims, Virginia Giuffre, died recently after several much-publicized statements that she was worried about her safety. If all the Epstein documents are exposed at once, it's likely to reveal the identities of dozens of young women who were victimized, turning them into celebrities against their will at best, and targets for conspiracy theorists at worst. And it wouldn't...
You know, it's just funny. I'm just wondering if he's doing this for YouTube, because I see you got to be careful, because when you say young women, you know, the emphasis on young, because, yeah, you know, we know that they weren't, they were girls, they weren't women, So kids, yeah. Uh, although I do think there was probably some people of age that things happened to as well. Um, yeah. I mean, I get what he's saying with a lot of the stuff, but it's not looking good.
Be the first time that massive investigations were declassified by public demand. The 9/11 terror attacks were the first case where a massive government investigation into a large-scale failure took place. And at that point, the government was more than willing to release the data because it was useful to shut down conspiracy theories. It showed the key ties of the terrorists, including elements of the Saudi government. But it didn't show any government collaborators, save for some people missing some key warning signs. Not that this quieted down the jet fuel can't melt steel beams brigade, and sometimes one side wants to release things to deliver a blow to their opponents. The January 6th files were also heavily declassified during the Biden administration, as the government doggedly went after both anyone who was there at the Capitol during the raids and anyone who planned the attack. The government convicted hundreds of people of crimes related to the attack for offenses ranging from simple trespassing to they ensured it couldn't be shut down if the future administration wanted to, which turned out to be very prescient. But this time it might be different for one key reason. If you ask the conspiracy theorists, the files will never be revealed because both sides have something to hide, and this time they might be right. While it's unlikely that there's some massive list of elected officials who are paying visits to the Epstein Island, the odds are good that there are embarrassing names for both parties on there, and that means that it might be a rare case of bipartisanship to keep the files locked down for now. But that might not be anything new. While the national crisis saw that documents released were very different, it's pretty unprecedented to reveal all the details of a criminal investigation, especially one that hasn't technically been concluded. While everyone involved might have something to hide, it's just as likely that the government is still trying to piece together all the names involved and exactly how they were involved. Releasing the details to the public could make further indictments much harder to achieve and turn the case from a criminal investigation into a trial by public judgment, which means the case is likely to remain in the hands of speculators for now. It's unlikely the full Epstein documents will ever be released due to a combination of legal liability and the government still investigating the many twists and turns of the case. But that doesn't mean all of it will be locked up forever. There are likely to be continued leaks from both government insiders and hackers revealing juicy details about the case. The problem is it'll be just as easy for bad actors to continue releasing misinformation and dubbing it leaks. Good thing the internet can always be trusted to tell the difference between fact and fiction, right? And if you think the Epstein list is the only thing the government doesn't want you to see, check out.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult, man. You know, I was a little confident. It seemed like things may have was going to happen, but now don't think so at all. Um, just to let y'all know, I'll leave the original video, but boy, I have to do a lot of editing on this one because there was a lot of things said that cannot be repeated. Mm, 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 mm. But yeah, this was it made a lot of sense as far as people who can be affected by this that may had nothing to do with what was going on, but this is what I'll say. If you got on a plane and you went there and you saw some things that just you were just like confused on what was going on, you was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. You didn't participate, but you seen what went on. And then you didn't report it. And not only not report it, but if your name is on them flight logs more than once, like you knew what was going on there and you came back again, I think it's going to be really hard for people to escape this. That's why that list ain't going to come out. Man. Because, like, I feel like every time someone wants to speak out or has something to say, all of a sudden they get sick or something happens. So Just think about all the people who are sitting on information right now. Just really think about that. Comment below what you guys think about this video. It was very informative. I do agree with a lot, but I still feel like a lot of these people need to be held accountable. Peace out.